So, if we are back to the background has been brought by and is brought by a participant into a project. In any case, it will remain the property, the exclusive property of each of the participants. It is not because you participate in a project and you bring into the project a certain amount of background that it will imply a transfer of property. No, this is not clearly the case. You will have to provide on this background some access right, but it will remain your property. So consequently, because you will remain the owner of this background, you will be still free to license or to assign and to dispose of your background as full as you want, but to a certain extent, of course, because you will have to provide some access right to this background, so we can't be faced to exclusive license. Clearly, in IMI, we are working on in the framework of non-exclusive license. So if you remind the definition of this background, we have mentioned that this background has to be necessary for the implementation of the project. But in addition to that, it is requested to the different participants to identify this background they consider necessary for the implementation of the project. It will avoid, of course, misunderstanding, but it will also facilitate the process when granting the different access rights. And if you have any legal restriction regarding one specific background, it has also to be specified in the project agreement that will be signed between the different participants. And as an example, it's important for you to carry out part of the task of the project, part of your background. But on this background, perhaps you are not directly the owner of this background, or you have already commitment towards another third party. So you are entitled to use this background, but you are not entitled to provide license on this background. So it is important for the other partner to be aware of this restriction. So now we have explained the general framework for the use and of the background. Now quid of the foreground. So you remember the foreground relates to the result that will be generated by the participant during the implementation of the project. So this foreground will belong to the participant who generate it. But it may be a case where a specific result has been jointly developed by several participants. In such a case, it may be foreseen between the participants that they will be the joint owner of this foreground. They may also decide, on the other side, that only one of the participants will be the owner of this foreground, but consequently, there will be some reward. So, but it has to be agreed on a case-by-case basis between the different participants. And in case of ownership, of joint ownership, each of the joint owners will have the right to use this joint own foreground, but they will have first to inform the other joint owner, but they will have also to provide fair and reasonable compensation to the other joint owner. This compensation, here we are only talking about a concept, the fair and reasonable condition, but of course this condition will have to be agreed between the different joint owners. It may be in the project agreement, but if it is not possible to already define this fair and reasonable condition in the project agreement, it may be done in another agreement, like a side agreement. So because this foreground that has been developed during the project belongs to the participant who generate it, of course, this owner will be free to also license or otherwise dispose of the ownership right of this foreground. But because of the different obligations linked to the access right, it will be important to also inform the other participant of this possible transfer or licensing on the different foreground. It will be in addition to the possibility to license some right on the background and foreground, it will be also possible for the different participants to transfer the ownership of this foreground and background. In the past, I always use the example of a pen. I'm the owner of this pen. I need this pen to work in the project, but for any reason, I have decided to transfer the ownership of my pen to another entity. This other entity may be one of my affiliates, but it may be also a third party to the consortium. So consequently, because I am the owner of that pen, I am able to transfer the ownership. But because I am also involved in a collaboration, I have also to ensure that when I transfer ownership of my pen, and I also transfer my obligation linked to my involvement in the IMI projects. So that's really important, and it will also protect the different interests, not only of the owner, but also of all the other partners involved in the collaboration. So, we have discussed about the ownership of background, the ownership of foreground, but now we are also in this collaboration, and I have some right and obligation towards the other partner. So, and one of these obligations is to provide some access right, to provide the right for the other participant to use my background or my foreground for certain purposes. So, in the grant agreement, it is clearly mentioned that when an access right has to be granted, it will be granted on written request. But it may, for certain consortium, be a very strict procedure and difficult procedure. So they may agree in their project agreement that for some of the specific background or some of the specific foreground, or perhaps for all the background and foreground, there is no need of a written request. But it is up to the consortium to decide how they would like to proceed when requesting the different access rights for completing the project or for research use or for direct exploitation purposes.